Well, Chandana, I'm so excited to have you on the podcast because I almost feel like speaking to you is equivalent to a healing session. There's always some takeaways and always some realizations that come out of it. But I'm deeply intrigued because you started off professionally as an investment banker, scientific, mathematical, and now you're in this space of energy healing and hypnotherapy. What is
Yeah.
that journey and how did it end up here?
So I started off as an investment banker, but I did psychology in my undergrad as well. I was a double major. And then somehow, as you go through life, I think that aspect of me, that was the psychology, that part of me that wanted to understand people, began to be drowned out by the opportunities that investment banking and a very traditionally successful career presents. After I got the right opportunity, I took it up and I really enjoyed my time as an investment banker because for me, looking at markets was just another way of trying to understand people and behavior because there was so much of talking and understanding what investors are thinking and how they'll respond. So I still thought it was a very intuitive life. But the moment I realized that it was not the best career for me was when I had a flare up. I had an autoimmune condition that I got diagnosed with at the age of 25. And I was in the UK. And I remember that was the first time I was forced to slow down a little bit. So that meant taking time off work, staying in on weekends, and just connecting again to myself. And I had realized that in the pursuit of getting a top score at university, going to business school, getting that job, I had somehow lost that connection with myself. I remember I had someone visiting me and they were sitting across the table. And one day they just asked me, this person was much younger to me in age. He asked me, he said, Chance, what is it that you really want from your life? And for the first time, I didn't have an answer to that question. That really hit me. Not the fact that I didn't know, but the fact that that question took me by surprise. So it opened me up to the possibility that maybe I had, in the pursuit of going after the next big thing, I had somehow stopped asking myself if I was happy and if this is still what I really wanted. So that question and that person, seriously, I think was the point of awakening in some way for me. And post that, given my health condition, I decided to take some time off work and figure out how to solve my health issue. You see, autoimmune is a broad term given for anything that we aren't able to make sense of. The body is attacking itself. So, and I somewhere thought actually that my body was broken. So that started my journey with understanding body pain. And that's what went to energy healing with. I wanted to figure out how to get over my personal pain. And something interesting happened. I noticed anytime I was emotionally not okay, my flare ups would be heightened. So I started noticing while I was still working that there was a connection between my body and my mind. Sometimes emotionally, I wasn't aware that there was something not okay with me. But the moment I'd get the flare up, it was a confirmation that, oh, yes, I have been feeling a little bit lost, or there is something that I've been running away from. So that's what started this inquisitiveness to actually explore the subconscious mind. Because I did do psychology in my undergrad, and it was the conscious approach and what you think, what you know. But then I did realize there was a part of us that we may not always be aware of, the subconscious. And that is why I chose hypnotherapy to go into. So the approach of hypnotherapy I follow is spiritual hypnotherapy or transpersonal therapy, which combines spirituality and psychology. And what that means is it allows you to understand more about yourself from the perspective of energy, consciousness, spirit. So that is how my journey began.
How do we convince, or do you even try and convince people that we have six senses, but we get overconsumed by five? And so we never have enough, it's almost like emotional capacity to ever explore the sixth sense.
Yeah.
Do you bother like trying to convert people, or is it just if they understand, they're drawn to you and then you can support them?
Sometimes I have to inform people
Hmm.
because a lot of the times the ignorance or lack of trust comes because they don't know enough. So
Hmm.
that is the time I will explain about the mind and the sixth sense. So I always make it relevant to them in terms of personal examples. So, have you ever had that moment where you were not thinking about something, but all of a sudden an idea came to you? Or have you ever thought of somebody and automatically that person ended up calling you? So these are small day-to-day examples of telepathy, of subconscious communication that we all experience. And what I think really hits home for a lot of people is when I ask them, so you know you need to let go, or you know you need to get over this addiction, but you're not able to. How come? So that means there is something that's driving you beyond your conscious thoughts and choices. There is something beyond that. So what is that? Or how come you think you see someone for the first time, but you get triggered in a way you can't explain? There's something deeper within that is resonating or not resonating with that situation. So when you can make it personal for people, I think the message hits home. A lot of the times, people may actually know, but they may not be ready to explore because it doesn't feel safe. And that is where a lot of my work has to come in, telling them that your inner self will never show you anything you're not ready to deal with. So it's a little bit of a trust exercise, but if a person's not ready, we just allow them the time to get there.
And how does someone develop this sixth sense? How does someone develop that intuition or that inner knowing and strengthen it for themselves?
I think the way I find myself developing and honing that is by taking out enough time to listen to yourself, whether it's with small things, what should I eat, where should I go, or whether it is with the bigger things in life. But you need to start exercising that muscle of checking in and asking yourself, what is it that I really want? What is it that I'm feeling about the situation? Yes, it may take a little bit of time to filter out passing emotions with an inner sense of knowing. But then I always give certain cues to my clients to be able to distinguish voice of the mind, the voice of the ego, from the voice of your intuition. The voice of your ego can be very directive. It can go in circles. It has a stronger tone about it. But the voice of your intuition or that inner self, the voice of the spirit, is very gentle. It never tells you what to do. It just gives you a nudge in a direction. It is not directive, but it's very suggestive. It never takes away that inner autonomy. It's not like you have to do this and then go do that. No, it's always very fluid, because that's the energy consciousness that comes through. But to be able to tap into that, we just need to silence ourselves. And any practice in silencing ourselves starts that journey.
Yep. So silence, pause, bringing in that awareness. What about physically? How do we nurture our body physically, away from toxins? And what are your recommendations around that?
So, nature is a beautiful space to start spending time in nature mindfully. So, whether that's taking a morning walk or going for a weekend hike, where you're device free, where you're actually just present with the beauty around you, naturally shifts your vibration to the energy of nature. And that vibrates at a frequency where you're most intuitive. You're most connected to yourself. So, early mornings, sunrises, spending time in nature, spending time by the water, physically, those are some things you can do. Mindful exercises also help with that. So you can do a yoga class, you can do a Pilates class, or you can even do strength training, but with presence, with breath awareness. So if it's a power yoga class, I wouldn't think that would be appropriate. But if it's a slow paced activity, even when you're lifting weights, but you're really conscious and focusing on your breath, it activates the parasympathetic nervous system. And that automatically creates space in your body for healing. It creates that energy of silence that's conducive to intuition.
So when I remember starting on this journey, one of the fears I had, and I think a lot of people have this, is they'll become a little bit airy in the head, a bit off with the fairies. And so how do you think about the masculine and feminine energy and
Yeah.
keeping that in balance?
Yeah. So, here, one thing, whenever you're going on any self developmental or healing journey, one thing which is very useful is to make that practice your own. Your teacher, for example, your yoga teacher might be a yogi. So they might be following a very different lifestyle to what you can follow, living a very, very physically tangible life. So don't aspire to be another person. Just know that your specific path will come through who you are. So take a practice that you find helpful, but check in with yourself and make it your own. So see what works for you, what doesn't. If you stay connected to your own inner knowing, that balance will always be there. The imbalance comes when we are trying to emulate another, or we have not checked in enough. So we are getting very carried away with a particular tide, yin or yang. But when you're actually connected to yourself, it feels a little bit difficult, because when you are opening yourself up to a new way of life, you want to absorb everything someone's teaching you, but still use your own discernment and choose for yourself what feels right to me today. Maybe today I'm not there. Today, this is where I start and this is where I stop. When you ask yourself that regularly, that balance will remain. So that even if you have to go out and take a big step, it'll eventually be a progression as opposed to be something that you do overnight and that you don't feel ready for.
And is the right place always to be in balance? Is it right for us to assume that we always need to be 50% yin, 50%, yang? Is it always 50-50 masculine, feminine? Or are there times in our life where we're more feminine, or there are times in our life where we have more masculine energy? And it doesn't matter which gender we are, but we're talking more about just these energies that we embody.
There are times, based on where we are in our life and the conditioning and societal construct we find ourselves in, certain aspects of ourselves will be naturally more nurtured, and we will go through that. So whether it is a traditional education structure, which is a little bit more yang heavy, or a a creative class or a hobby that you're doing that's more yin based, you do not need to be 50-50 all the time, because even in what you call a very yang experience, there are aspects of your yin that'll be there. And even in a very yin experience, there's an aspect of your yang that'll be there. So the way I think about it is, as long as you are going with what is there in front of you and are truly present with yourself, that balance, that equilibrium will be maintained wherever it is. It may look a little bit more yin, it may look a little bit more yang, doesn't matter, but you will be centered within yourself. And that is key. It doesn't matter what experience you find yourself in. And we don't need to be one or the other. When we're trying to define it, we automatically end up confining or restricting the flow of who we need to be. So yin, yang, these are just names. But as long as you feel connected, yeah.
But isn't it right that as a female, right?
Mm.
As a female who is very much in her masculine energy, if she continues to do that over years and years, and there's a very intense masculine energy there, and there's really no softness, can that not lead to burnout? And isn't that right? So having one, or I mean, even if you have like, you're expressing a lot of feminine energy over a period of time, it can kind of make you lazy because you're not sort of enacting on what you aspire.
You raise a very interesting point, because sometimes we are caught in a particular structure that only nurtures an aspect of who we are. In that structure, if a person is truly open and checking in with themselves regularly, and when I say checking in with themselves, being honest about how they're feeling, being honest about what's drawing out to them, they will naturally gravitate towards the things in their life that will bring them balance. So, for example, they might find themselves being more drawn to a particular yoga class, or to partners and friends who are more nurturing and yin based. So, subconsciously, we're always striving for that equilibrium. But when we make people aware of it, they become more. They can understand their preferences a little bit better and consciously make choices that can help them in that balance, instead of subconsciously seeking out experiences and people that provide that to them. Uh, so yes, that awareness is useful. But if you're present with yourself, you'll find that naturally you're gravitating towards those things and opportunities that are bringing that balance in your life.
And so, Chandana, I know one of your specializations is hypnotherapy.
Mm-hmm.
How do you bring that practice into someone who's in imbalance?
So when we do hypnotherapy, we are using the mind to access that part of you that is more grounded, that sense of being within you, your subconscious, from where a lot of your wisdom, a lot of your perspective, and a lot of your ability to resolve things, that potential comes. So we use that as a way for us to occupy the mind so that the spirit becomes more active. So it's a yang practice in terms of there's a method, there's a structure, we follow it. But where you're going is actually a space where a person feels comfortable to be, because they are able to bypass a lot of the conscious thoughts, etc., that keep them busy. So hypnotherapy is a beautiful way of connecting to yourself. I always give it the metaphor of a rock. The rock has been floating on the surface of the water and it's been going up and down, up and down. That's most of us every day. But every now and then, the rock sinks to the bottom and discovers stillness at the bottom of the ocean. And hypnotherapy, meditation, mindfulness are just practices we sink into ourselves. So that is how hypnotherapy allows people to experience that.
And just to close off our talk today, what are the 3 things that you would encourage someone to do? I know we spoke about nature, we spoke about pausing, self-awareness. And then as an extension of that, what are 2 or 3 other things that someone can do to, 1, increase their intuition, to feel more connected to themselves and bring their life in balance, and just overall, reduce the stress and anxiety that we feel?
Yeah. So I think if I was to answer it in that question, in that order, to increase your intuition, I feel giving yourself some time in the day or in the week where you're doing nothing. It's an actual pause where you're not trying to meditate, where you're not trying to solve your life's crises, but you're just allowing yourself periods of silence. And you can enjoy that with a cup of tea or like a coffee or just listening to music, but allowing that right brain to get activated. And that only gets activated when you're in a state of rest. Doing that is very healing. A lot of the times nowadays, we have an idea of what healing needs to be, but even getting rid of that and just being, that is very useful. Journaling is a practice which activates your subconscious mind. So, whenever you have a question in mind, just try and come up with an answer and see what's flowing through you as you begin to write. Because when you're writing, you're more in touch with that part of you that can express itself without the limitations and confines of everyday thought. So, journaling, spending time just being, and self nurturing is a very useful activity. Now, that could look different on different days. Today, self nurturing means that I give myself a break from everybody and I hang out by myself reading a nice book. Tomorrow, it could mean that I actually go out there and connect with someone I really care and love. But self nurturing is a way our subconscious feels very healed. In Hawaiian philosophy, they believe the subconscious is like a child and the conscious is like the mother. So when we can give unconditional acceptance to the child within us, that child becomes very connected with the mother, the parent. So that is something I would do. Nurture that child within you. And you'll feel life flowing through every vein of yours just because that part of you feels seen and heard. If you do that, it's almost like you have your biggest strength rallying behind you. So these are like 3 practices I would recommend, along with spending time in nature, getting some physical exercise every day, because that ensures the body's regulated in a way that is conducive to your emotional and physical well-being.
And what a beautiful parting message. And it really reinforces for me my own journey and experience that I think every relationship that we have, whether it's a relationship with a person or a relationship and with an interaction or an experience that we have, is really the reflection of our relationship with ourselves. So going back to that experience of self-nurturing and finding time for ourselves is so just so important. Thank you, Chandana. I've really enjoyed this conversation, and I hope that our listeners have also found some strategies and initiatives that they can take in their life to make it a much more fulfilling life.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Esha, for having me here.